Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Taped podcast, the most lo-fi podcast in the world. We are your hosts, myself, Michael,
Me, Michal, or nostalgia.
And David.
Mickey T, if you don't know.
Yeah.
Hello.
And of course, we have a guest today on the podcast. Please welcome former member, you could say. He's made his
OG.
comeback.
It's drama. I'm back.
We made up.
Yeah. I mean, after Louis' death, we had to fill the void.
Yeah, they had to bring me back to life.
And of course, he is back. And for what purpose? A car seat headrest, worst to best.
Because I like them.
Including How to Leave Town.
Yes, How to Leave Town is an album. If you say otherwise, you are wrong.
Will says otherwise, but come on.
Ah, look.
What does he know?
It's not like he's the one who made the music,
Yeah,
but okay.
You know, what a dweeb.
All right, so 13 projects to get through. You know the
Sure.
drill. Just rank them from worst to best. Give our thoughts and opinions on each of them, and vice versa. So, well, who wants to go first? Given their number 13 pick.
I can go first.
Yeah, go for it.
My number 13 pick is 1. What order are we doing this in?
Michal, David, then me.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, I picked one as well.
I also picked 1.
Fair enough.
Coincidence.
Okay, same order.
First album is last. I think out of the first 4 numbered Car Seat Headrest one's easily the least significant with the material on it. Other than the fact it's his first album. It's just the songwriting doesn't feel very refined. He doesn't seem very confident in his songwriting either. The production is so lo-fi that at times it's just unlistenable. The instrumental sections on a lot of the tracks are so abrasive and just straight up incoherent that it's hard to even understand what's happening a lot of the time. I don't think it's an awful album. I think it has some good ideas. But it definitely does sound like, a very poor debut album in comparison to what he would go on to release. It's also way too long. It drags on, and like the good ideas could have literally been condensed into like maybe half an hour. So yeah, it's a drag.
Me? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same order.
Yeah, I think you should take it more as art rather than an album or something. Like a lot of them don't even seem like songs. They're just these really distorted, screechy tracks that are kind of painful to listen to. But it's not obviously it's just because, well, obviously this is bad, but when you compare it to Will's later stuff, it does seem a lot worse. But there's a lot of potential you can see on this album. There's a couple of cool musical and lyrical ideas even in Happy Ugly. I thought that was my favorite lyrical song. It's kind of really bare and honest about being self-conscious, just about enjoying yourself almost. And then in David Lynch versus the Moon, I really like those kind of dreamy guitar chords, and then there's really evil chords on Inside the Bell Jar. So there's definitely a lot of potential on this album, but it was just the position he was in. He didn't really have much means to record it properly that dragged this thing down. Plus, he obviously didn't have the experience that he has later on.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it was recorded in his car. Story y'all know.
Yeah, I can respect that this was just made during a time where Will wasn't in what's the word, most financially big way to sing, because that's why I can respect the rawness and I can respect the potential that's coming from Will, because he's just proving he's a really good songwriter and that he has potential to make great music. Instrumental wise, the album is kind of hard to listen to the full way because just it's that bad sounding. The mixes are just often buried. The distortion is just off-putting as hell, and it's ear grating. Worst examples that I found in this was fucking Inside the Bell Jar, Happy Ugly, and Big Jacket. And when I listened to this the first time I checked out, I just had a throbbing headache for the whole day. It was because of how distorted and like ear grating a lot of it was. It just gave me a throbbing headache for the whole day. It wasn't fun. Like I would comment more on the songwriting as well, if only I could understand what the fuck Will was saying half the time, because
Yeah, I meant
the
to.
vocals are just that buried in the mix. And I get that this was like the whole thing they had to go through, and I don't fault him for that. But it's just not one of my my favorite Car Seat Headrest albums.
Facts.
Big facts.
Let's move on to best and worst tracks. Yeah. I'll start. My favorite tracks were Tybee Island, Horse Ghosts, Big Jacket, and Kid War. My least favorites were Caesar the Somnambulist, Julie New Hay, My Dad Just Passed Out, and New Bulletin.
My favorite tracks were Mortgages for Veterans and Inside the Bell Jar. Are we doing 3?
Just however many.
Yeah. And then yeah, the rest of it kind of just like fades into some big distorted mess. Like Caesar the
All right.
was it
My
Caesar Sombrero
favorite
or
tracks
something?
from 1 were Good Sunday,
Mhm.
what OUJ stand for, and Kid War. Worst probably Happy Ugly.
Hmm.
All right, moving on to number 12 pick. Same order.
All right. My number 12 pick is 2.
Whoa, big surprise. Yeah, nice too as well.
Mine is also 2.
All right.
2 for 2 right now. No pun intended.
See what you did there. I think that 2 is in a lot of ways similar to 1 in its flaws. So I think instead of repeating everything I said about 1, I think there's better than 1 in my opinion. I think the production is slightly more coherent. It's still not great by any means, but I think it's a lot easier to make out some of the, instrumental nuances and even the lyrics a lot of the time than it was on 1. And I think the second good thing it does is keeps the track listing short. Unlike the almost hour long debut, this one's only like 35 minutes if I'm correct. Something
Something
like that.
I think you're right on that.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to digest. There's no painstakingly just overly long, odd headache inducing instrumental pieces. It's still not great by any means, but it's a lot more condensed, and I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, it had a lot of the similar flaws to number 1, but I think like with each of the progressive albums, you see his vocals, they kind of mature and he becomes more confident in them. And there are a few like We Are in Space. It's got this like weird looping guitar feedback thing, and it almost reminded me of some parts of How to Leave Town. It was cool to see things like that. And then Shoelaces is like a really like it works best when he strips back the production a lot. And like Shoelaces is just a guitar and him singing with some vocal like oohs and ahs behind it, which works really nicely. So that's where it's at its strongest, when it's not like when it doesn't hurt basically. But not a brilliant album, but like he's obviously progressively getting better at it. It's nice to see.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I agree with what Michal said, that this is very similar to 1, but it is a big step up and a big improvement from 1. Like the mixes are still off and on the instruments, and of course Will's vocals, to the extent where some songs are kind of unlistenable, but I don't really mind all that much here, except some of the songwriting I still can't really get, because again the vocals are buried, and it's fine. Like, I guess there's not really much else to say about it. Like, overall it's still showing Will's potential, but it's an improvement over 1, so that's all that's really needs to be said.
Best and worst tracks. My favorite tracks on 2 were Smoke Zone. Then it will be exactly the same as Earth. My least favorite tracks were It's You, You're the Asshole That Made This, and Reversible Jacket.
My favorite tracks are We Are in Space, Shoelaces, and Fiction I, or Fiction 1, or whatever that is. And then You're the Asshole Who Made This would be my least favorite track.
My favorite tracks from 2 were this one time I went to the coffee house because some guy I knew was playing, and I just sat there for an hour and didn't talk to anyone. Then I came home and I wrote this song. Then will be exactly the same as Earth, and hanging out with my mom in women's apparel. The worst was Smoke Zone.
Oh,
I just didn't like the abrasiveness of that track.
understandable. Okay, number 11. My number 11 pick was 4.
Ah, shit! I wanted to be dramatic and make my 4.
Are you ready for some controversy?
No.
Alright, go.
I chose Making a Door Less Open.
Ooh.
Alright.
You're getting back at me for Kanye now.
No.
Bro.
Well, maybe.
I'll start. I think every album for me beyond this point is good, at least. When I compare 4 to 2 and 1, it's definitely more refined. It's certainly more well written. The production is actually somewhat coherent and overall enjoyable. I think I won't talk about 3 yet, but I think it is very similar to 3. And spoiler alert, I just don't think it's as good. Like a lot of the themes and the sounds on this album, I could definitely compare to 3. I just think on this one, it's just not done as well. I don't think the songs stuck with me as much as they did on 3. I think there's just some things to be desired from this record, and yeah, overall, it's just the least enjoyable out of the remaining ones.
Yeah, I think he has another go at like the long songs, like in the 6 and 7 minute range, and it just at this point in time doesn't really work out for him. It's a lot of just boring repetition that I'm not really into. But like, it's a huge leap in quality from 1 and 2, considering that like he released all those numbered albums in like 4 months or something. But yeah, definitely a huge leap. And I would listen, like I go back to these ones more to just kind of see where he came from rather than to actually enjoy them. If that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
it's cool. Like one of the last tracks, The Ghost of Bob Saget, is actually like the chords and the melody and all that is the last track on Teens of Denial, which is really cool to like go back and see how. But yeah, definitely a good album, but not my favorite.
Michael?
Okay, Making a Door Less Open. Right. Well, it's the most recent one, and why am I choosing it so soon? Because in my opinion, this album is a bit of a mess in a way. Like, I did a review for it on my channel already, so I'll just keep it kind of short and simple. This is the band's like full attempt at going full indie electronica. I know they did it in previous efforts, but the one where they actually attempted to do it fully, I feel like has a lot to be desired. On one hand, there are some genuinely great and amazing songs that I do listen to, but there's just also some just genuinely messy and just terrible songs in my opinion. And those tracks in particular are the Hymn remix, Famous, and fucking Hollywood. Hollywood unironically makes me want to puke. That's how much I fucking hate that song. And some tracks for me like had the issue of like drawing out ideas with good instrumentals, but just making them kind of a like monotonous listen. Like there must be more than blood, for example. And I feel like on this album in particular, it's carried more by Will than anything else. Like his songwriting and his vocals are still great, still has that car seat headrest feel. I can really appreciate that. But just as for the rest, it's just kind of monotonous to me to listen to. And yeah, that's just my take.
Best and worst tracks on 4. My tracks were A Good Bridge to Never Cross Until There's No Doubt That He's Dead and The Ghost of Bob Saget. Worst tracks, Who Even Knows and Feel Like Daniel Johnston.
Favorite tracks are, I'm not gonna say it, Good Bridge to Never Cross, and Around, the last track, and then
Oh yeah, Round's got 2.
and Not Kidding Around and Heartless Dick are probably my least favorite.
Alright, best tracks for me off of Making a Door Less Open were Martin, Life Worth Missing, and Deadline's Thoughtful. Worst was Famous, Him, and Hollywood.
Number 10. My number 10 pick was 3.
Yeah, mine's 3 as well.
we're not exactly making
Mine is
it.
also 3.
All right, same album again. Back to the usual.
Yep.
If there is one numbered album, in my opinion, that's definitely worth checking out. It's without a doubt 3. I think it even though it's very early in their discography, I still think it has some very important and essential Car Seat Headrest tracks. The songwriting is definitely up to par with some future Car Seat Headrest records. The production, a huge leap forward, in my opinion, from 2. It suits the aesthetic of the album a lot more, and it's definitely more coherent. It's definitely more enjoyable. There's also, it feels like the most refined album out of the numbered albums. The themes on the tracks and the aesthetics really tie the whole album together. It's not just a bit of a clustered mess like One, for example. And I do genuinely think it's a very good album from start to finish. It's got some like pretty well known Car Seat Headrest songs, especially the ones that did go on to appear on future albums like Teenagers, Take Off Your Clothes, and Was Starving. And yeah, I think it's a very good album. I just think there's way better albums.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's one of his more thought through and refined albums. I like it's like it's kind of a double edged sword when you can go back and you can see where the cool tracks came from, like Teenagers and Starting and things like that. But at the same time, it's nice to go back and see the older tracks. And I actually love Ryan North by Northwest. There's a really nice guitar melody in that just it just sounds so good. It's almost like the lo-fi-ness of it adds to the song rather than takes away like it has in the previous albums. It's just a genuinely good album.
I would agree with you. I do enjoy 3 quite a lot as well. It's another improvement on the early Car Seat Headrest sound. It feels like it has a lot more energy, even for how lo-fi it is, and I appreciate how refined it has become. For instrumentation, it's very good. I do enjoy quite a lot of the instrumentation on here, and it feels a lot more clearer, especially in the songwriting department as well. As it's a lot easier to understand what Will is saying, and Will's vocals are still very good for the most part. And this is showing Will that Will as a character is pretty funny. He could be depressing. He could be pretty sarcastic, and vice versa. It's not an overly consistent album. There are a couple tracks here that I don't care for, but I do genuinely enjoy quite a lot of tracks on this album.
So yeah, my favorite tracks on 3 were Teenagers, Take Off Your Clothes, Portrait of the Artist as a Young Fag, Beach Fags, Beach Funeral, and Oh Starving, of course. Least favorite, yeah. Sun Hot and Summer Bummer.
My favorite tracks are Teenagers, Oh Starving, and Ryan North by Northwest. And then least favorite, probably No Starving. The opener track didn't really feel that one too much. And Summer Bummer.
Right, my favorite tracks from 3 were Beach Death, Portrait of the Artist. I don't want to say the rest of the title. I'm not comfortable saying it. And Foreign Song. Yeah, I don't feel comfortable saying it anyway. Portrait of the Artist and Foreign Song. The worst is probably Sun Hot.
Yeah, Sun Hot. Agreement.
Yay.
Right, number 9. I think this is where it's going to start getting a bit more interesting.
I can't wait to hear.
Number 9,
Monomania.
Nervous Young Man.
I also chose Monomania.
Well, I'll start as per usual. I do really like Nervous Young Man. I think it's perhaps one of the most personal pre-Matador era Car Seat Headrest albums, along with, the obvious Twin Fantasy and How to Leave Town. But I think in this case, I think the long album length kind of works against it in a way. It's got a lot of amazing tracks, but there are some tracks here that I admittedly don't care too much for, and I think they don't really serve the overall album, in my opinion, and kind of slightly lower my enjoyment of it. I still think it's a really good album. As I said previously, any album at this point, I do genuinely like. I think it's essential Car Seat Headrest listening either way, and just every album I ranked above it is, in my opinion, a bit more consistent and enjoyable through and through, in my opinion.
David, you live.
Hello?
I am. Yeah, Monomania, definitely. Like as Michal was saying, from this point on, they're all good albums. But I don't know. I just all the songs that my favorite songs on this album, all have been remade in better versions. So listening to them just kind of gives me, like, makes me feel the need to go listen to another album. So I'm always I feel kind of distracted whenever I listen to this album nowadays. But I'm focusing on the tracks that are like only belong to this album, like Romantic Theory and Misheard Lyrics. I do enjoy them, but again, Souls, the longer tracks still don't really hold my attention for as long as they should. At this point, it's just kind of some weird sexual song that goes on for like 10 minutes, and I don't really feel it. Same with, and like I find myself struggling to remember how a lot of them even go, which is never a good sign. But yeah, just certain things about, like, Times to Die is obviously a great track, but I think the quality is still kind of lacking on it. It still makes me want to listen to other things, but still,
Fair enough,
still
I
great track,
suppose.
still good album, just not quite there.
I mean, I agree that it's a pretty good album. I do really like Monomania quite a lot. It feels like the melancholic sequel to Twin Fantasy, as it is more about like a breakup than what was going on Twin Fantasy. Instrumentals are very good to me on the most part. I do enjoy the decent mixes of like normal indie rock lo-fi style with some elements of indie electronica. And a lot of it is great, especially on tracks like Misheard Lyrics. I love like the ambient feel of that track. Times to Die is pretty psychedelic in a way, and Anchorite and Los Borrachos are pretty cool too. The only issue that I had with this album was that some of them were very derivative, and they kind of like lose me about halfway through, and just become kind of uninteresting for how long they are. And this happens in particular on Souls and Mod Gone. Like Will across the board again was great. He's always pretty consistent on his albums. You know, his lyricism is still on point, especially on Anchorite. That makes this whole album like come full circle thematically for me. And the rest are pretty decent, but not as good as that final track in my opinion. And yeah, that's where I stand on Monomania.
Right. My least favorite tracks on Nervous Young Man were my favorites, sorry, were Boxing Day, Thick Unsung, I Wanna Sweat, and Dreams Fall Hard. My least favorite tracks were Jerks and Goodbye
My
Love.
favorite tracks on Monomania are Misheard Lyrics, Mod Gone, and Times to Die. My least favorite are what are my least favorites? I suppose Souls is really the only one that I don't actually like.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing.
That's fair enough. My favorite tracks from Monomania are Anchorite, Sleeping with Strangers, and Romantic Theory. The worst is Souls.
Right, number 8. My number 8 pick was My
We're
Back
back
Is
on
Killing
track.
Me,
Mine is
Baby.
also My Back's Killing Me, Baby.
Mine's 4.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think My Back Is Killing Me, Baby is the first what I would call great album on these rankings. You know, in a lot of people's view, this is kind of like the first real Car Seat Headrest album, and you can really see that. I think Will really came into his own here. I think he's a lot more confident than he was even on, in my opinion. The production, while still very much lo-fi, is quite clear in a lot of ways with what he's doing instrumentally and vocally, and it's easy to make everything out. The tracks just flow really well into one another. I think the album has a great sense of cohesion throughout. I think it's also got some underrated deep cuts that a lot of people look past because of some of the more significant tracks that they would re-record. And overall, it is a really good album. And at this point, I'm just ranking them among my favorites and not really worst to best.
Yeah, I noticed on from this point forward in a lot of the albums, and the vocal production gets a lot better. Like he does a lot of vocal harmony type things, and they're less, I suppose, like noticeable or jarring in this. They meld together much better. It's just a lot more pleasing to listen to. I enjoy that, and he has a lot more kind of laid back, like acoustic tracks, like "Happy News for Sadness" and "Sunburned Shirts." Both start very nicely acoustic. I really appreciate all that. But
All right.
what happens to me in a lot of these, like I was saying before, like this just makes me want to listen to Teens of Style so much. Like a lot of the like climactic moments in all these songs almost disappoint me now because of what I know they could be. But like I know I should like just take it as it is and be unbiased. And if that's true, then it is just a really solid, very car seat album.
All right. I chose 4, the final of the Number albums, and it's my personal favorite of the Number albums. I feel like this is the points in the early Car Seat Headrest albums where the lo-fi sound of Will's early records are at their peak. And, they have probably some of the most enjoyable instrumentation and songwriting from Will, in my opinion. Some of my favorite instrumentals included the opener. I love the switch up in that track. Even the Who Knows almost feels very psychedelic in a way, and I really enjoy that aspect of that track. And Around has just got some great energy to it, and I like the horns in that track too. Songwriting wise, Will has some amazing moments, like on the opener, Not Kidding Around and The Ghost of Bob Saget. I think that he's a very strong songwriter in general, and it just shows on these certain tracks. Vocally, Will is solid, but there are moments where he can again get buried in the mix, which is kind of common with his early records, and I got used to it at that point. But at least it wasn't as grading like on One. So it's a decent album nonetheless. I think it's very good, and personally, it's my favorite.
My favorite tracks on My Back Is Killing Me Baby were The Drum, Sunburned Shirts, Stoop Kid, No Passion, Father Flesh and Rags, Prisoner of War, and
track.
Happy News for Sadness. My least favorite track was Open Mouth Boy.
Yeah, my favorite tracks were The Drum, Happy News for Sadness, Sunburned Shirts, Some Say No Passion. Like there's actually so many good tracks on this. Least favorite, Father Flesh and Rags. I'd say there's not many.
Fair enough. My favorite tracks from 4 are A Good Bridge to Never Cross Until There's No Doubt That He's Dead, Not Kidding Around, and Around. And the worst, in my opinion, bit of a controversial one, the Ghost of Bob Saget.
Whoa, that is controversial.
I don't like the instrumental on that track.
I don't know who Bob Saget.
I know who Bob Saget is.
My number 7 pick is Monomania.
David?
Yeah, the 2011 version of Toon Fantasy for me.
We're on 7, yeah?
Yeah, 7.
Alright, My Back Is Killing Me, Baby.
I'll start. Monomania is an amazing album, I think. It has some of their best, pre-Matador tracks. And I honestly think this would end what am I on about? My Back Is Killing Me, Baby, are pretty much equal in terms of quality. I think Monomania may be slightly more consistent in my opinion. I think it just has one brilliant track after another. I think the production is miles ahead of what it was on My Back Is Killing Me. And I also think it's more thematically and aesthetically cohesive as a full album. I think every song has an overall purpose to the flow of the album, and overall, I think it's a very enjoyable album to listen through.
Yeah, I struggled with whether or not to put this one on this point at this. Like when I originally listened to it, like before the remake came out, I never really had much of an issue with the recording quality. Like obviously it was always there, but like Will's honestly like almost ruined this album with me because of how good the face to face version is. I fucking love it. Like there's just so many. Like obviously, this isn't the lyricism and the composition on this isn't like touched by the quality. That's still brilliant. But it's just almost moments are almost letting me down. Like there's a point on Famous Prophets where the guitar riff and the vocals come together, and it is such like a cool moment on the remake. And on this, it's almost just the mixing of it doesn't really do it for me anymore. And it's just I haven't gone back to this one since the remake came out. This is the first time I've listened to it in a while. Researching for this, but researching.
Research. We're scientists.
Quote unquote
Yeah, but
research.
Like, fucking. It's just a testament to how dedicated Will is to his craft that he went back and remade this, and how much I prefer the new one. I suppose I hate talking bad about this album, but you know, you gotta.
It's understandable.
Understandable. Right, I chose My Back Is Killing Me, Baby. I think that is a very enjoyable project that, yet again, displays Will's knack for great songwriting and great orchestrating of instrumentals. Songwriting-wise, this album is very solid. I do appreciate that Will has a sense of humor on here. I especially love the part where he said he'd kick his dad in the shins. When I also appreciate the fact that he mentioned a shoulder fetish on No Passion. That shit was kind of funny. And this one was a weird one. Being pregnant on Open Mouthed Boy. Okay then. I thought that was pretty funny though, and you know, obviously, in the typical Car Seat Headrest fashion, there's you know, the depressing lyrics too, and you know, it's very heartfelt, very, very, you know, what's the word, anxious in a way. You know, the production is still lo-fi, but it's very enjoyable. There are moments of great synth work, like on Happy News for Sadness and Something Soon. I think that the guitars on this album shine, and I love the atmosphere of Father Flesh and Rags. Again, there are some tracks I don't really care for as much as others, but it has some genuinely great moments that I do sometimes come back to. I think that overall, you know, it's a brilliant Car Seat Headrest album.
Right, now, best and worst tracks. My favorite tracks on Monomania were Romantic Theory, Times to Die, Souls, Mod Gone, Lost Baracus, and Anchorite. And not really worse in any way, because I still think it's a good track, but least it would be Misheard Lyrics.
My favorite tracks on Twin Fantasy 2011 are Sober to Death, Bodies, and Cute Thing. And I really don't dislike any of the tracks on this, but I suppose Famous Prophets is a bit long for this one, but I really come to love it on the next album.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. My favorite tracks from My Back Is Killing Me, Baby are Happy News for Sadness, Father Flesh and Rags, Something Soon, Open Mouthed Boy. The worst is Stoop Kid.
Right, number 6. My number 6 pick was Making a Door
Mine
Less
was
Open.
Nervous Young Man.
Mine was also Nervous Young Man.
Yeah, Making a Door Less Open certainly explores, not really explores because they've already explored some of these ideas, but dives headfirst into a lot of new ideas for the band. But that being said, I don't think it ever stops sounding like Car Seat Headrest. I think Will does a good job tying it together and making it seem like a genuine Car Seat Headrest album, despite its many, new features, new directions, new ideas. And I don't know if this is a direction they'll carry on from now on, or if it's just the band experimenting on this kind of one-off album. I think the sound overall is a very welcome addition to the catalog. I think the synth work and the electronics are perfectly incorporated into the Car Seat Headrest sound, in my opinion. And overall, it really sounds like the band are having fun with this record. I think it has some top tier Car Seat Headrest tracks among the track list, some of the best songs ever, and I think it's a great listen through and through.
Yeah, the length of Nervous Young Man is kind of daunting at first, and it kind of causes a lot of songs to get lost in it. But at the same time, whenever I re-listen to it, I always like find an old song I forgot or find one I never even realized was good. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword in that manner. But I suppose it's better because most of them are decent songs. They're all good songs. So it's not like it's an unjustified length, but maybe it could have been split up or refined or something. I don't know. But I really like a lot of the production on this. A lot of the distorted guitar sounds, like on "We Can't Afford Your Depression Anymore." Just, I don't know, they feel good to me. I don't know how else to explain it. And like little moments like the bend on at the start of the jerk is really nice, and the solo on um which there's a solo on a song I don't remember. I'm sorry, but it's a good solo. But yeah, really, it's a nice album to just come back and put on in the background, and like a different song will jump out at me every time. I'll really enjoy it, but it's more of his it's kind of more normal songs at the same time. They're less experimental, some of them. I wonder, is because he used to have a different project before this, didn't he? Called Nervous Young Man. I wonder if this is like
Yeah, I heard
songs
about
from
that.
that he's taken back and kind of remade. But
I don't actually know that.
that'd be interesting to find out. But as well as like
Yeah, yeah.
the sound of this album being really heavy and enjoyable, there's a lot of lyrical things on it to enjoy. Like "Just Tired" is a really sad song, just about like making excuses for people who mistreat you and stuff, and it's just very heartfelt. I really enjoyed that. A lot of good moments on this album.
I agree. I agree with a lot of what you said. This is the band's longest album. It's 20 tracks, 2 discs. It was I was a bit apprehensive because of the length, because normally I don't like 2 disc albums, but I did really like what Will and the guys had to offer on this. I like a lot of the tracks on here. This album sounds really good for the most part. There may be like a few tracks that I don't care for all that much that I do kind of dub as filler, but other than that, there are some amazing moments. I love a lot of the passages in the longer tracks. They feel so well crafted and well made. There are some great standouts on this album in terms of songwriting and satirical comedic lines on a lot of these tracks. The production is still solid. You know, its blends of synths and indie rock still work to their finest. There's a couple that I didn't really care for all that much, or I found uninteresting, or a bit monotone. But other than that, I think it's great. Also, why was "God Save the Queen" playing at fucking death in
Yeah, I have no
movies?
idea.
I questioned that.
It's art.
It's a bit of a weird one, but I do genuinely enjoy quite a lot of tracks on here for the length of it. It's a very good Car Seat Headrest album. It's definitely one that I think everyone should at least listen to once. It's that good. So yeah.
My favorite tracks on Making a Door Less Open were Weightlifters, Can't Cool Me Down, Deadlines, Hostile and Thoughtful, Martin, Life Worth Missing, and There Must Be More Than Blood. My least favorite track was Hymn Remix.
Thank you.
Well, I always agreed with that.
Good.
Favorite tracks off Nervous Young Man are probably Jerks, Crows, the bigger mix, Just Tired, and Knife in the Coffee. My least favorite tracks are probably I Wanna Sweat.
Fair. Um, my my favorite tracks from Nervous Young Men are Broken Birds, Boxing Day, Don't Remind Me, The Worst are Burning Man, and I Want to Sweat.
Top 5. My number 5 pick. Woo! My number 5 pick
Woo!
is
Top
Mine's Making a
5!
Door Less Open.
Mine is Teens of Style.
It's the first Car Seat Headrest album after signing to Matador Records. It's also the first Car Seat Headrest album with the whole band. And, it still sees the band at this point, hold on to some of the lo-fi aesthetics, but it certainly is the most accessible of the lo-fi Car Seat Headrest albums. I think it's pretty much a compilation of some of the best tracks from previous releases, all packed and re-recorded into one album. And surprisingly, considering all the tracks are taken from different, projects, it all gels together really well. I think it flows really well as an album, and Will and Company do a really good job selecting which tracks to revisit and put together for this kind of, in a way, like look into like Car Seat Headrest of yesteryear, and a bit of a accessible album to get into the band that just signed to Matador Record, quite a famous indie label. I don't think it acts as an alternative to listening to every album that came before it. I still think there are some great tracks on previous albums, and they all have their own quirk to them. But I think it's a very good taste of what Car Seat Headrest were before
To
signing to to Matador Records. Yeah, after signing to themselves.
Car
And
Seat
yeah, as a
Headrest
whole, I
signs to
think
Car
it's
Seat
a
Headrest.
brilliant
Yeah,
album.
I picked Making a Door Less Open, and it's a weird one for me. It's probably so high on my list just because of a few certain tracks that I really enjoy, but then other ones do bring it down that might have made it higher. I feel like I saw they have so many different versions of this. They release like different mixes and arrangements for like CD and digital and vinyl and everything. And I feel like they maybe should have just
Yeah, like I got my
yeah,
vinyl
I
version.
had
I
the
got
same with
really
my CD.
confused.
I've all like I they give me a code to download them all, so I'm like jumping between them trying to figure out which mixes I prefer and all. But I feel like they should have just yeah, you bitch. We all have
Yeah.
So I'm the only one
collections.
here that doesn't have a copy of it.
Yeah,
Sad.
you fuck. It was like
You
your
just
second.
fucking.
Not like I was gonna get one anyway.
Yeah, I feel like they should have focused on maybe like one version and put all the effort into that. Like some of the like the hymn remix, I hate that. And there's another the deadlines thoughtful. I think I'm even struggling. Or was it deadlines?
Really, you didn't like that?
Oh, there
Deadlines.
was some weird
Hostile was
remix
like
on
more the
this.
hard
Hostile,
rock
which
one, and
one?
then Thoughtful was the fucking like
Yeah, no, I
electronica.
don't think I enjoyed thoughtful. I should probably know what I enjoy, but
Oh.
oh.
Yeah, I love Thoughtful.
Bro, Thoughtful was one of my
But
favorite
then
tracks. That's
just
making me
this
depressed.
features like definitely probably their best production to date, as well as my favorite vocal performances from Will. Like on Can't Cool Me Down, it's absolutely killer. Like how much he's going for it. I absolutely love it. And it's nice to see like What's With You Lately. I think that's like their guitarist
Mm.
Ethan just doing a wee solo
Yeah,
track by himself. It's nice to see that. He's actually he's a good singer and all. I enjoy that. But then I suppose like I want to say the second half of the album drag for me, but that's the second half of the CD, which might be different from what other people see. But a couple of the songs just didn't really land for me, like Famous.
there is
Oh,
a reason for that. I heard that they it wasn't quite intentional that they had like a certain date to submit, the songs for press on vinyl and for CD, and after they had already sent out the album to, be printed on vinyl and be printed on CD. Will decided that he wasn't quite happy with some of the order of the track list or some of the tracks that were on it, and therefore like he released a different version
okay.
for
I
digital.
suppose
So the
is
digital
what we
version
should
is like
listen.
the final version. So like the CD and the physical versions are kind of like two demos in a way now
They're deep
because of that.
cuts. Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
get
it's
to
my
keep a
fucking.
bunch of
I'm assuming
demos. That's
later
fair.
pressings and CDs will have the
That kind of
the
makes me feel
updated track
special,
listing.
yeah.
So it's actually quite cool. Yeah.
All right. My pick was Teens of Style, the first release under Matador Records, and it is a collection of remade tracks from Will's earlier work. And this album fixed a lot of issues that I had with a bunch of tracks in the early catalog that were featured on here. It still has that kind of lo-fi edge, mostly in the vocal range, but I do appreciate that aspect of it, that it still feels kind of authentic to the original Car Seat Headrest sound in a way. And the album itself, it's just very fun, very catchy. It's very enjoyable here that personally I didn't really care for much prior, like the drums, Strangers, Oh Starving, Mod Gone, and yeah, overall I just think it's a fun record, and
Yeah, definitely.
it'd probably be one that you'd probably recommend to a starter
Yeah.
for someone who wants to get into Car Seat Headrest music. Definitely, it's not that structured as say Teens of Denial or Twin Fantasy, but it still has a handful of great. So on that aspect, I can appreciate it, and it fixed some issues that I had with songs that I thought would have been potentially great and made them great. So I'm happy about that. I think that Teens of Style
Yeah,
is pretty
my
great.
favorite tracks on Teens of Style were Sunburned Shirts, The Drum, Something Soon, No Passion, Times to Die, Mod Gone, Oh Starving, and Lost Baracos. And if I don't really have
You
any
have to,
tracks I
you
don't
do.
like, but if I had to pick a least favorite, I'd
Really?
yeah, Strangers.
It is.
I think it's a great song. It's a tough choice.
Yeah, you had like fucking 5 years to come up with it all.
Understandable. There's a lot of great material here. Like
Yeah, so for making Door Less Open, my favorite tracks are definitely Weightlifters, Can't Cool Me Down, and There Must Be More Than Blood. My least favorite tracks are Hollywood, although the more I listen to it, the less I hate it, but it's still and Famous.
I still hate it.
Okay, top four. My number 4 pick. Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
thought
I
we were
didn't say
both talking
mine.
about Teens of Style. I got confused.
No, my favorite tracks were Something Soon, The Drum, and Mod Gone. If I had to pick a worst, because I like every song on here, Sunburned Shirts. That's hot take.
My number 4 pick was Twin Fantasy,
Mine was Teens of Style.
Mirror to Mirror. All right.
Mine was How to Leave Town.
I won't get into too much detail about some of the themes and everything, because for obvious reasons, I'll be talking about them in more detail later on. But I think it's definitely still an incredible album, and it still holds up, in my opinion. It really put Car Seat Headrest on the map. It blew them up on like 40 of them, a cult following that
In one car.
not a lot of yeah. And it was fucking
Still.
Just
Car
records
Seat
in the
Headrest.
car.
It's in the name.
I don't know. Yeah, I know. That's the whole thing. I know that's the whole
It's
thing, but it's
dangerous.
just the fact that you had to record in a car.
Yeah.
It's just
I mean,
kind of
I don't
funny
think
in
he
a
was
way.
driving. I don't think he was driving, David.
It is very dangerous.
It's like a traveling circus. He just drives while
That's how he
fucking.
promoted. He just recorded on the road and fucking played
I
it.
didn't know he was going to Astro World.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it really set a high standard for his like, albums to come very early on in his career. Yeah, I think it's a great album, and it still holds up. In my
Yeah,
opinion.
mine was Teens of Style, and this is just like the conglomeration of every previous album with like all the best tracks taken out of them and revamped in such a better way. I really enjoy this. It still has like that classic car seat sound, but it's just way more production value. His vocals are way improved, and like the longer songs like Times to Die, which kind of got old for me a wee bit on the last album, really just like feels great. Like I wait for it on this album. And like then the quick punchy ones like Piss Teenagers. Piss Teenagers. Yeah, they're really great. It's a really good solid album considering that it's taken from so many different sources and different time periods. I love it.
All right, my number 4 pick was How to Leave Town. And like I mentioned earlier, this doesn't really feel much like an EP at all. It feels more like an album because, it's nearly an hour long. And either way, this is great, and it's an exciting batch of tracks. It's the usual Car Seat Headrest blend of like synth work and indie rock tracks, and overall they just sound amazing. They sound well crafted, absolutely fantastic. The synth tracks are by far some of my favorites on here, especially Kimochi Waruai. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And and I love the beat switches as well throughout the track listing as well. They just sound so well crafted and unexpected, and it kept me excited like for what else was going on. Again, songwriting is great across the board, especially on Hey Space Cadet, Kimochi Waruai, and Best Monster Thing. And it's basically it's probably one of the most emotional Car Seat Headrest like moments of songwriting, in my opinion. And overall, this is just like a really great EP, but it's not my favorite. It's still great though. I enjoy quite a lot.
Right,
of
instead
this.
of just repeating myself and giving my favorite and least favorite tracks on Fantasy twice, I'll mention the two tracks that I actually prefer on the 2011 version, and that is My Boy
Really,
and
Never
Nervous
Swimming
in Humans. Yeah, I don't know why, but it sounds so good in the fucking lo-fi style, and I prefer the monologue in this one. And same with My Boy. I think it's just a little too grand and a little too refined on the 2018 version. I love how just raw and like almost unsettling in a way it is to open in Fantasy, the 2011 one. No least favorite tracks, by the way.
For Teens of Style, my favorite tracks would be The Drum, Something Soon, No Passion, Times to Die. Mod Gone, I really enjoy the simple melody that goes through that and like kind of mixes with the vocals. And Oh Starving, really no least favorite tracks on anything. No, I refuse.
All right, you refuse. Fair enough. My favorite tracks from How to Leave Town were Kimochi Waruai, America, and Space Cadet. I don't have a worse track, but I have to pick my least favorite, the ending of Drum and Mine.
Right, now we're on to the pedestal. All right, my number
three. The big three, lads. The big three.
Is Teens of Denial.
Mine's How to Leave Town.
Mine is the 2011 version of Twin Fantasy.
I think it's very hard. It was very hard for me to kind of separate these three. I think they're all perfect. I think they're all 10 out of 10 albums, and I love them all dearly. But it was a tough choice, but this is the choice I had to make. I think Teens of Denial is a perfect album. I think it's their first full album with just completely new material on Matador Records. And it just sounds like Car Seat Headrest are just not holding back at all. They've got more ears on them than ever before. Will has a full band to, bring into life anything he envisions, and it just sounds like track after track they go in guns blazing. The songwriting is incredible. The instrumentals are really gratifying. They're brilliantly composed. Will is always full of passion, and it seems in a lot of ways like Car Seat Headrest reaching their peak, even commercial success. I think because this album blew up, like Rolling Stone and Pitchfork and Anthony Fantano were all putting it in their like top 5 of the year. Everyone was like, all eyes were on Car Seat Headrest again, and yeah, it's quite an album and it's quite an achievement, I think, and I love it.
Yeah, How to Leave Town it was kind of a slow burner for me. I remember I used to not like it at the beginning, but then one day and I listened to the whole thing through. Well, obviously I had done that before, but something changed in me. Like before that really long 15-minute intro, I used to hate that. The really jarring synths that come in the middle of the repeating drum beat, but now it's just, I don't know why, I just enjoy it for some reason. All those loud kind of strange sounding synths. And then on that title track, he's having fun with the lyrics as well. I really enjoy like the I don't know, you wouldn't call it a metaphor, but he's just not describing something. He's calling it like this shabbity babbity booyah. It's great. And different things like the vocal harmonies on Kimochi Waru, where are you? There's this great build up on tracks to like You're in Love with Me, which is just like a really great, almost unexpected, like upbeat love song in the middle of the album with funny lyrics just about being gay and shit. It's good. And then I Want You to Know / something else is really brilliant. There's a moment on the end of it vocally or lyrically where he's like describing other relationships that have failed, and he's saying like, but we're not like them, we're nothing like them, and it kind of gets more desperate and the vocals get harsher as it goes on, and I really enjoy that. And then it ends on like this this solo acoustic piece, and it's just really beautiful. I really enjoy that song. And then you've got like that portrayal of like the life of artists on Is This Dust Really from the Titanic. It's kind of like a blunt view of what life is like on the road sometimes. It's just, the whole album is really great. I really enjoyed it. I went back and I gave it another chance after I first listened to it. It's a great album.
I agree with you there. All right. My number 3 pick was the 2011 version of Twin Fantasy. This is the peak of the early Car Seat Headrest catalog that goes up to before Matador, you could say. And there's a reason why this album gave Will notoriety, because it's that great. The instrumentation on this album in particular, it's there's moments of like poor mixing and shit like that as expected, but that doesn't really get in the way of how enjoyable it can be. I feel like the guitars especially shine on here. I love the like explosive end to Beach Life and Death, and High to Death feels kind of psychedelic in a way, and it's really cool. And the title track's organ makes it sound like a funeral in a way, and it's pretty kind of disheartening, and it's just a journey to listen the whole way through to. Throughout this whole album, it's very cohesive in terms of songwriting, and it's just a blast to listen through, while at the same time it just makes you think. And I do really like the whole consistency of this album. The only issue I have is that it's just rough in a way, and all that would get fixed later on.
Oh no.
Me, how you live? Oh shit, he's dead, not again.
Yeah, we'll just cut it, I guess.
Oh shit.
Hello. Okay, my fucking mic just.
Oh, he made a noise.
This is
My
this is
mic
literally
cleared
just
itself.
the hour in, so I'll just mark
My
that.
favorite tracks on Teens of Denial are Fill in the Blank, Vincent, Destroyed by Hippie Powers, Not What I Needed, Drunk Drivers, Unforgiven Girl, Cosmic Hero, The Battle of Costa Concordia, and Connect the Dots. And I do not have a least favorite track.
My favorite tracks on How to Leave Town are Kimochi,
Understandable.
Wario, You Are in Love with Me, American Never Been, and I Want You to Know / whatever. These favorite tracks, not that I don't enjoy it, but Is This Dust Ready from the Titanic isn't really much of a song. It's kind of like a cool filler monologue bit. I guess that's kind of a cop out. The ending of Dramamine as well kind of isn't one that I would listen to by itself either. It's part of the album, but I suppose if I had to pick one. Yeah.
That's why I picked as my least favorite for How to Leave Town. Okay, my favorite tracks from Twin Fantasy are Sober to Death, Bodies, High to Death. I don't have a worst track. I like and love every track on here, but if I had to pick, probably just be Stop Smoking because of how short it is, even though I think that song is great.
Hey, silver medal.
Top
My
2,
number 2
lads.
pick
We made it.
is
Mine is
Silver
Twin
medal.
Fantasy 2018.
Mine is
3 different
Teens of
ones.
Denial.
Um,
Except
yeah.
like the first
I
three.
like how diverse
Yeah.
our ranking has been like through the
Yeah, except
whole
the start.
podcast.
He numbered those words.
Well, for the most part.
How to Leave
Except for
Town
the most part.
is, in my opinion, just their most beautiful album. It's haunting, it's atmospheric, it's poignant, it's perfectly written, in my opinion. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. I think it's perfect in every way. I wish it was a fucking. That's the only flaw I have, is I
Does it
wish
make
it
a
was a
difference?
fucking LP and EP. Um, I kind of technically can't rank it when I'm ranking my favorite LPs. Um, it marks the first time Car Seat Headrest, explore more electronic aesthetics, and I think it serves their sound perfectly. And I think it should absolutely be, in the conversation along with albums like Twin Fantasy and Teens of Denial among their best. And I won't get into it yet, but it also has my favorite Car Seat Headrest song on it. Yeah, I think it's amazing. I think it's perfect.
Yeah, I gotta change
You
that
wanna
thing
you
over.
wanna start a petition to
I think
just
that would
change
make
How to Leave
Will
Town to an LP?
even more like stern in the fact it's an EP.
Just find out where Will
Honestly,
lives
like,
and just force him to do it.
here it's an LP. I don't care.
You get final say.
It'd be fine.
Yeah, I chose the Twin
Fair
Fantasy
enough.
Face to Face. Like just from this point on, everything's like a 10 out of 10, obviously. But this was just like, originally it was a great album with the one major flaw. Well, not major, but one flaw, that the production quality wasn't really up to standard. And he just completely fucking blew it out of the water on this remake. There's small lyrical changes, but they're really tastefully done, and it doesn't infringe on anything that old Will said. Like, it doesn't change much. It's just nice to hear the little. Sometimes there's a wee bit more honesty in like the genders he uses and things like that in some of the songwriting. It's less vague. But yeah, and the Naked Giants as well. I'm pretty sure they were playing on some of this,
Yeah.
and they were doing some background vocals, and they really bring a lot to the table. Like, they don't feel out of place in this either. It's just great. It has, like, there's a lot of long songs on this. Like Beach Life and Death is like 10 minutes, and Famous Prophets is 15 or something like that. But it doesn't feel like it at all. Like, they definitely deserve it, that runtime. It's just a really solid album, really like thematically consistent as well. And yeah, I just love it.
Yeah, I chose Teens of Denial, the first like album which has new material when he signed to Matador Records. But it's everything that you could want from a Car Seat Headrest album. It has the, it has the usual solid, like impactful vocals from Will, impactful songwriting that's both depressive and has funny quotables. It's just very lovable, like his songwriting, and there's no dull moment going through on the songwriting front. And there's not a dull moment on the instrumentation as well, in my opinion. The production is just fun, explosive, in some fashion that you'd normally expect with a Car Seat Headrest album, but I feel like it's refined very well on this one. It sounds really good, and it's just like I said with Twin Fantasy. It's just a journey, you know. Like Car Seat Headrest albums are a journey anyway, and honestly, this is one of my favorites, and it pains me to put it in second place because I do enjoy it that much. But there's just one that does it more for me. But this just does it just as good as that album. So
Right.
yeah, Teens of Denial.
I don't have any. I'll start off by saying I don't have any of these favorites, so don't expect that. My favorite tracks on How to Leave Town were the ending of Dramamine, Beast Monster Thing, Kimochi Waru, America Never Been, Hey Space Cadet, and my favorite Car Seat Headrest song of all time, I Want You to Know You're Awake. I hope that I want you
Yeah,
to know
it's
I'm
great.
awake. I hope that you're asleep. It's
Professional
incredible. It's one of my
podcast.
favorite songs of all time.
Yeah, my favorite tracks off of Twin Fantasy are Beach Life and Death. Obviously, it's unreal. Sober to Death, Nervous Now Humans. I love that one. Bodies is such like a great like danceable track. I love it. Cute Thing, Famous Prophets, pretty much everything. Like, if I had to pick a least favorite, it would be the same. probably stop smoking just because it's not a filler, but it's probably the most expendable track on the album.
Yeah, that's true. My favorites from Teens of Denial are Destroyed by Hippie Powers, Vincent, Drunk Drivers, Killer Whales, Drugs with Friends. I love every song on here, but if I had to pick a least favorite, 1937 State Park.
Yeah.
I do. I love
10.
it too. This bitch a 10. Saying.
All
right. Number one
my
picks,
favorite Car Seat
boys.
Headrest album
We made it.
is
Mine is
Twin
Teens of
Fantasy
Denial.
Face to Face.
Mine is Twin Fantasy
Yeah,
2018.
the 2018 version of Twin Fantasy is a masterpiece. I think it's one of the best albums ever made. I think it takes everything that was amazing, that was special about the 2011 original, and fully realizes all the ideas and all the soundscapes that Will wanted to create. I think it's just a definitive Car Seat Headrest album, and I think it's almost in every way an improvement over the original. I think it also doesn't at the same time it doesn't infringe onto the enjoyment I have with the original. I think they're still kind of separate entities in my mind, but this one just blows everything out of the water for me. The songs are amazing. The song structures on every track is incredible. It's like first time listening to this album, you can't really expect where a lot of these tracks are going to go. It's like every track is a journey in itself, and it's just an incredible piece of music, and I think it is one of the best albums ever made.
Yeah. It was really hard for me to pick between Teens of Denial and Twin Fantasy, but I suppose since Teens of Denial was the first Car Seat Headrest thing I'd ever heard, because I'm a bit of a basic bitch, it's kind of biased in my mind. But this is just, it's such like an energetic and emotional, like it's like the most rock and roll thing they've ever done, but Will's vocals and some of his like compositional decisions still keep it like integrally Car Seat Headrest. It's great. Like Cosmic Hero is one of my favorite tracks on it. It's such like a, I don't know, it's almost tragic, that like is starting verse. But and the Ballad of the Costa Concordia is like this slow, depressing ballad, and then it reaches this point and it goes all distorted, and then it builds into that final, like, which is basically is an entirely separate song. Is such a cool turnaround for me. I love listening to that song. Like, it totally deserves its like 10-minute runtime or whatever. It's a roller coaster. I absolutely love this album. All the weird, like the strange like xylophone solo or whatever it is on State Park. Little things like that, just to make it like Car Seat Head. Well, not even Car Seat Headrest, just to make it cool. I just love this album.
Fair enough. Just take everything that I said about the 2011 version of Twin Fantasy and apply it to the 2018 version. But this time round, I feel like the 2018 version makes this album perfect for me. It makes this seem just a lot more fleshed out, a lot more enjoyable, and it still maintains like the aspects of what made the 2011 version so special, especially in terms of songwriting, vocal performance, and just all in all, just amazing experiences and just massive like roller coaster to go through. It's such an amazing album to go through, like I said previously. And there are tracks here and there that, well, personally didn't hit me as much as others on the 2011 version, but I still thought they were great. They just made the 2018 version just made me love those tracks even more. And yeah, that's all I really have to say for Twin Fantasy. It's just an amazing record. One of my favorite records of the 2010s by far. And I think it was the first one I listened to. I think
Have you shown us all?
I think Michal showed me this in college. Yeah, in college.
I mean, I showed him
And,
Twin Fantasy and Teens of Denial. He did the rest himself.
No. Yeah, well, I just did the rest myself later on.
I actually found out
just
about
for this
Car Seat
video,
Headrest
and I'm
fucking
glad I
4chan.
went through it. So
just before They're not quite an OG. I
You were
found out
you were an
Oh,
OG.
shit.
2014, just before How to Leave Town came out. So, but I wasn't huge into them. Like, it was
Huh.
only when I think they signed to Matador that I got really into them. And then
Fair
when
enough.
when Teens in Denial came
Yeah.
out, I was just a
I
fucking
think we
super
all
fan
were.
at that point. Yeah. Better late than never.
I'm a bit late to this. Understandable.
My favorites were
Best
all of
first
them. My
tracks?
least favorites were none of them.
Yeah, can I do that as well? Fuck, Teens of Nine, there is no. It's such a solid track.
Copy and paste.
It's great.
You can do that as well.
Unprecedented.
Okay.
event, so-
Fair enough.
I third that, by the way.
This will go down in history.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Also,
that is
shout
it.
out to
We
Starving
did it.
While Living. It's also
We ranked every Car Seat Headrest
Yeah.
album.
Shout out to Starving While Living. If it was,
Yeah, it would've
if
been
we
like
ranked
top
it,
4
it
or
would have
5.
been up there. You have to.
I might listen to that after this.
You're welcome. I
All right,
graced you with
thanks
my
for coming
presence.
back on the podcast,
Yeah.
David, for this episode.
I'm not-
You did. Now all we just
Yeah,
need to get is Louis
the-
back, and then we're
What's
sorted.
it called? The lore will be completed.
The tapes
So
lore
yeah,
will
thanks for
continue.
coming on. We'll have you on again if we ever have any good ideas. And yeah, we're coming out with a podcast next week. It's an exciting episode. Michael, do you want to explain that?
Okay. So since we're abandoning the old format that we do with the 4 albums, we're just going to do one massive episode where we just recap all of the major releases from the month of May and maybe a few we missed in April. So that'll be fun. That'll be interesting. Give us, because it's going to be easier on me
Yeah.
and Michal for the whole process, because it gives us more space to talk about stuff. Whereas talking about it track by track is a bit draining. Is a bit
And
just
it's also
not that
probably
good of a
not
way
the
to
most
review an
interesting
album,
thing to listen to.
because exactly. So if you just want to
Yeah.
hear us just full thoughts and opinions, no bullshit, just this is going to be the better format, of course.
And then in 2 weeks' time, we'll be coming. Yeah.
we have another worst to best, and this time around we will have another guest on the podcast, which
Mhm.
will be announced on the day, I suppose. So
Peace.
yeah, I guess that's it.
Oh yeah, check out our channels.
Yeah, check
don't.
out our channels, please. I upload frequently.
I upload whenever.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, see you. Bye.